cream always meant more because it was a new concept. It was, it was a pompous, the first pompous musicians, like the concept of respected musicians in rock and roll, which is a contradiction in terms actually, because if you look at rock and roll, the basis is that it's a backbeat. It's called beat music. Rock and roll, as far as I understand, was first coined by black musicians at the turn of the century, and it meant fucking. Let me rock and roll you tonight, baby, or whatever it was. That's all he's talking about. He's talking about fucking. So it's fuck music. It's strip music. Ba-boom, 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 ba-da-da-da-boom, da-da, da-da. I mean, it's strip drumming, real sloppy. The hi-hat's always... It's strip music. It's sexy music because it's strong, boom, 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 boom. And that's what it's based on. So, talking about respected musicians playing strip music, I never...
You compose on the bass?
Yeah, some tunes. The more simple tunes, those that have the hook or whatever, if there's a riff underneath it, then it'll be a bass tune. And the kind of tune that it turns out to be usually is what instrument I'm near. If I'm near a piano, I'll play a tune or try to figure out some chord changes with triads, because that's the only thing I can do. I mean, I can do majors and minors and triads and, hammer away at the bass figure of it all.
Right.
Well, I wanted to play all the guitars on the album. I wanted to be able to say, look, this is me. I can do this, and I can hit high notes, and I can sing Beatlesque, and I can do all this kind of stuff. But I still don't want to bastardize one thing, and that is that people have come to expect a certain bass sound from me, and that's the sound. So the next time you hear me coming out, even though I can hit those high notes and stuff, you know that when I pick up that instrument, it's going to be... Also, just because it would be a kick. It's like when Ringo recorded Bo Cup of Blues, or whichever that album was, and he didn't play drums, I freaked. I said, wow, the guy doesn't have to. That's right, he sings. So you got some other drummer. He's the star. Why not? You can get anybody else to play with him.
You don't think Kiss fans expect Gene Simmons to play bass and sing though?
Yes. I think they do. And I think Kiss fans also expect the whole album to be sit on my face, it's no disgrace kind of stuff. Oh, and they'll get that, but I also want... This is probably going to upset some people, but that's good too, because you shouldn't ever be totally comfortable and totally know what to expect. And yes, like that. You know the ballpark that I'm playing in, but you don't know what pitch I'm gonna throw you. You know that when you come to see a Kiss show, you will see a flash part sometime during the show. Where it's going to happen, I'm not going to tell you.
So tell me about some of the guitars you were playing on there.
Martin D140 for the acoustic things. And the way we do that is we record some of the more kind of picky, that kind of stuff, to get any kind of sound on it. This was recorded at the Manor in England, first of all, which is an old castle-like structure. So everything is brick, and the sound travels around naturally. So there's very, very little adding frequency-wise in the studio. It's pretty dry the way it is. The drums sound phenomenally big, and not because there was any echo chamber, that's just the way the thing sounded. So I record one pass on acoustic guitar in one range, then take a capo, move the frequency up and speed up the tape. So the tape is now, instead of da 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 da, so da 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 ba 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 ba, and record it at that speed, and then when you slow it down, you get a much fatter sound. You can, the same concept backwards of what David Seville and the Chipmunks did.
How can you, does that mean you have to pick the exact same notes?
Yeah.
Everything? I mean, the same strings, the same time, everything?
Yes, simply faster. In other words, as you speed up the tape, you raise the frequency.
Right. But let's say you're picking an E chord, an open E and then a high E and an open E and high E. And you have to pick at that same time, the same spot, that same...
Yes. And all you're doing really is when you slow it back down and you listen to it, it simply gives Well, here. You heard the first song that you heard that you liked, See You Tonight, yes. That one had the same concept. The electric guitar was recorded at a much faster speed and just tucked all the way under, so you didn't just hear acoustic guitars, because acoustic guitars after a while have a habit of just disappearing and becoming padding. Right. This other track, this is a big record in the sense that on some things you've got strings, 5 guitars, basic rhythm section, drums, bass, guitars, plus a 40-piece choir, plus a 40-piece string section made up of members of either the New York or the LA Philharmonic. You've got a big record. I don't think it's pompously big. It doesn't sound like a Queen record, even though it's the same engineer, Mike Stone, who did the same albums. It's got Phil Spector-ish kinds of flavors without sounding too big that you go, oh my God. I mean, you can still listen to the song. And that's just the way it was recorded. If you record everything with the same flavor frequency-wise, then the whole thing is just a wall of sound. And it takes you a long time to pick out certain things. What I tried to do is to put a lot of stuff on there, but not be overbearing. So you give, the background singers had less highs than the lead vocal. The lead vocal had a lot more highs. So different flavorings to the different things so that you can pick them out. And if everything's in the same frequency and people are doing different things clash into each other.
Tell me about some of the other guitars you use.
Gibson Les Paul with, for the chords, 9-gauge strings, played simultaneously out of a Fender reverb amp, an old one, and a Marshall at one point, at other points an Orange amp, which is really the same ballpark. We're really talking about 4 Celestions in a cabinet with a 100-watt power unit on top. Right. And the only difference between Marshall and Orange and some of the others is you may get a little bit brighter sound in one or the other, and Marshall will tend to break down less or more depending on where you buy it from and how old it is. So simultaneously I'd record the guitars, the electric guitars out of both, so that in fact when you hear electric guitar on the album, it's no more than 2 generations, where when you hear a Foreigner record, you'll hear big, huge guitars, or Boston, and there's massive sound, and there really are 10 guitars doing the same thing. I didn't want to do that. I wanted people to listen to the songs and not say, God, listen to all the guitars. Because what I want to do is to have people sit down and say, the songs are good. They're nice kind of honest treatments of what the songs are all about, but the arrangements and or the sound of the song doesn't get in the way of you sitting down and saying, gee, I like that song. Mm-hmm. Later on, one step at a time, later on when people like this other songwriting that I can do, start doing really highly polished, big sounding records. But that's after the fact that you expect, gee, I wonder what other kind of surprises the next album is going to have. This one is going to have surprise. So it shouldn't be surprise on top of surprise, because then you're just lost and there's nothing to put your finger on in familiar terms. I wanted a fidelic record. That's a nice word. I wanted a record you could listen to without getting... I wanted a good sounding record, not an overly produced record, not a polished record. Because that gets in the way of songs often, for my taste. If you're at the point where people already understand what you're doing musically, if you're a Queen, for instance, and if you understand that that's going to be as part of the sound, you can then play with that and you're already comfortable with that. If you're Phil Spector, you can have a wall of sound and people understand that's the style you're dealing with, that's the genre, like that, kids. And then the song works naturally, and you're not stumbling over, gee, that's a big sound. But if you're, if you're Pink Floyd and all of a sudden you sound like Kiss, everybody says, whoa, wait a minute, and you don't even pay attention to the song.
So are there actual tracks where you're playing lead guitar on here?
I'm playing riffy guitars. There are no solos that I'm playing on this thing. Although on all the demos that I make, I play the drums and the keyboards and everything, doing all the voices. And they're one-man demos. But on this record, I didn't want to do too much. It's a hard pill to swallow first that Gene Simmons can play guitar, and more that he can play solos and stuff. I'm doing riffy kinds of solo things on Radioactive. Burn Up With Fever is all me doing the riff through the song. Tunnel of Love. I'm playing guitar on all the songs, but the riffy things are Living in Sin, Tunnel of Love. I think that's it. The other things are just basic, straight rhythm guitar.